Xerion 4 was not an important planet. It was just a mining colony on the edge of Coalition space. The planet was small and cold, with thin air that most species needed masks to breathe. About 10,000 miners worked there, digging valuable minerals from deep underground. The colony had one major city and a few smaller outposts scattered across the frozen surface. Jothic had been sent there with 500 soldiers to protect a supply depot. The depot held fuel, weapons, ammunition, and medical supplies for coalition forces in that sector. It was not glamorous work. Most days were boring. Soldiers stood guard, checked equipment, and waited for nothing to happen. Then the Krillian swarm arrived. The Krillians were the enemy that every species in the galaxy feared. They looked like giant insects, each one as big as a small vehicle. They had hard shells that could stop most weapons. They had sharp claws that could tear through metal. They had jaws that could bite through almost anything. Worst of all, they never stopped coming. The Krillians fought in huge numbers, throwing wave after wave of soldiers at any target until the defenders ran out of ammunition or energy or hope. The attack started at night. Thousands of Krillian ships came out of faster-than-light travel right above Xerion 4. They landed troops all over the planet before the Coalition could react. Within hours, most of the mining outposts were destroyed. The civilian city was surrounded. The only major Coalition force left was Jothic's unit at the supply depot. Jothic knew his duty. The civilians in the city needed time to evacuate. They needed to get on transport ships and escape to safety. His job was to hold the supply depot and keep the Krillians busy while the evacuation happened. If the Krillians captured the depot, they would have the supplies they needed to hunt down the civilian transports. The commander organized his defense carefully. He had 300 Valerian shock troops, strong warriors like himself with natural armor and powerful weapons. He had 200 Anturian engineers, a species known for being clever and good at building things quickly. The Anturians set up defensive walls, automated guns, and traps around the depot. The Valerians took positions behind these defenses, ready to fight. The first Krillian attack came at dawn. 500 of the insect creatures charged across the frozen ground toward the depot. Jothic's soldiers opened fire. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filled the air. Explosions sent ice and dirt flying. The automated guns tracked targets and fired without stopping. The Krillians kept coming. They climbed over their own dead. They ignored injuries that would stop any other species. When they reached the walls, they started tearing through them with their claws. Valerian soldiers met them in close combat, using their natural strength and armor to fight back. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, all 500 Krillians were dead. But Jothic had lost 30 soldiers. The walls were damaged, ammunition was running low, and he knew this was only the first attack. The Krillians attacked again that night. This time they sent 1,000 warriors. The Coalition soldiers fought desperately. The Anturians worked to repair walls while the battle raged. The Valerians held the line, but barely. By morning, another 50 soldiers were dead or too injured to fight. The pattern continued for 7 days. Attack after attack, each one bigger than the last. Each one pushing closer to breaking through the defenses. Jothic sent messages asking for reinforcements, but the reply was always the same. All Coalition forces were engaged elsewhere. The Krillians had attacked dozens of worlds at once. Help would come when it could, but it might be weeks away. By the 7th day, Jothic had lost half his soldiers. The walls were more whole than wall. Ammunition was critically low. Everyone was exhausted from constant fighting with almost no sleep. Medical supplies were running out. The wounded lay in the depot's main building, groaning in pain. The civilians were still evacuating from the city. The transports could only carry so many people at a time, and they had to travel to a safe distance before they could jump to faster-than-light speed. Jothic needed to hold for at least 10 more days to give them all a chance to escape. He did not think he could hold for 10 more hours. That was when he got the message. A Coalition ship was coming to help. It was 2 hours away. Jothic felt a small burst of hope. Reinforcements, finally. Every soldier would help. Even 50 more warriors might make the difference. Then he read the details of the message. His hope turned to ash in his mouth. The ship was called the Valiant. It was a human destroyer. It carried only 60 humans total. 20 of them were ground soldiers. The rest were ship crew who would stay in orbit, 20 soldiers. That was all the reinforcements he was getting. 20 humans. Jothic wanted to throw his communicator across the room. 20 soldiers would make almost no difference. especially human soldiers. He had never fought beside humans before, but he knew about them. Soft skin, weak bodies, basic weapons. They would probably die in the first hour of combat. But orders were orders. He told his troops that reinforcements were coming. He did not mention how few they were. No need to destroy what little morale his soldiers had left. 2 hours later, the Valiant came into orbit. A small shuttle landed near the depot. The ramp opened and the humans came out. Jothik stood waiting to meet them. He wanted to see what he was getting. Maybe they would at least be useful for carrying supplies or helping the wounded. The first human off the shuttle was Captain Jake Morrison. He was tall for a human, but still much smaller than Jothik. His skin was pale and his hair was dark. He wore combat armor that looked thin and weak compared to Valerian armor. His eyes were strange, both facing forward instead of spread around his head like sensible eyes should be. Those forward-facing eyes looked at Jothik without any fear, which the commander found odd. "Commander Jothik," Morrison said, holding out his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thanks for having us. Looks like you've had a rough week." Jothik did not take the hand. He was too angry and too tired for politeness. "Captain Morrison, I was told I was getting reinforcements. Instead, I get 20 humans." Morrison lowered his hand, not seeming offended. 20 is better than 0, Commander?" "Not by much," Jothik said bluntly. "No offense, Captain, but humans are not known as great warriors. You have no natural weapons, no armor. You come from a peaceful little world far from any conflict." Something changed in Morrison's expression. It was subtle, just a slight movement around his mouth and eyes. But suddenly Jothik felt uncomfortable, like he was being measured by a predator. "Earth is many things, Commander," Morrison said quietly. "Peaceful is not one of them. But I understand your concern. Let me introduce you to my officers. This is Lieutenant Lisa Hernandez, my tactical officer." A female human stepped forward. She was shorter than Morrison, but moved with a confidence that reminded Jothik of his best warriors. She nodded at him, but did not smile. "And this is Sergeant Danny Cole," Morrison continued. "He commands our ground forces." A third human joined them. Cole was built thicker than the other two, with scars visible on his face and hands. His eyes swept across the depot, taking in the damaged walls and exhausted defenders. He did not look worried. He looked interested, like he was solving a puzzle. "We know you're in a tight spot, Commander," Morrison said. "Tell us what you need. We're here to help however we can." Jothik wanted to scream at them. He wanted to tell them that 20 soft-skinned humans could not help against thousands of Krillians. He wanted to tell them to go back to their ship and leave him alone to die with real warriors. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Morrison stood, relaxed but ready. Maybe it was how Hernandez had already pulled out a data pad and was studying the defensive positions. Maybe it was the old scars on Cole's hands, the kind of scars that came from close combat. Or maybe it was their eyes. All three humans had those strange forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes, Jothik realized suddenly. Eyes meant for hunting. For tracking prey. "Fine," Jothik said. "I will show you to your positions. Try not to die too quickly." Morrison smiled then, and Jothik felt that uncomfortable feeling again. "Commander," the human said, "I promise you we're very good at not dying." The next Krillian attack came 4 hours later. The recreation hall on Sentinel Prime was packed with soldiers from across the galaxy. Aliens of every shape and size filled the massive room. Some had scales, others had fur. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. They came from hot worlds and cold worlds, from planets with thick air and thin air. But tonight they all came for the same reason. They wanted to hear stories from Commander Jothik. Jothik was a legend. Everyone knew his name. He belonged to the Valerian species, a race of large warriors with hard shells covering their bodies. His shell was dark blue and covered with scars from countless battles. He had 4 eyes that could see in many directions at once. His body was twice as tall as most species and 3 times as wide. When he walked, the ground shook slightly under his weight. The commander had fought in 30 wars. He had seen planets burn and watched civilizations fall. He had led armies to victory when everyone else thought defeat was certain. Young soldiers told stories about him around campfires. Officers studied his tactics in military academies. He was the kind of warrior that others measured themselves against. Tonight, Jothik sat on a reinforced platform in the center of the hall. The platform was made of the strongest metal available because normal furniture could not hold his weight. Around him, hundreds of alien soldiers sat or stood or floated, depending on their body type. The room buzzed with excited conversation in dozens of languages. Translator devices built into the walls turned every word into sounds that each species could understand. The crowd grew quiet as Jothic shifted his massive body. His shell scraped against the metal platform with a sound like rocks grinding together. He looked around the room slowly, his four eyes taking in every face. Many of the soldiers here were young. They had joined the Galactic Defense Coalition recently. They had fought in only a few battles, maybe none at all. They looked at him with wide eyes full of hope and excitement. Jothic remembered when he was young like them. He remembered thinking that war was glorious. He remembered believing that courage and strength were enough to win any fight. He had learned differently over the years. War had taught him many hard lessons. The hardest lesson of all had come from the most unexpected source. The commander's mandibles clicked together, making a sound like stones tapping. This was how his species showed they were thinking carefully. The translator picked up the sound and turned it into thoughtful silence for the other species to understand. "You come here for stories of glory," Jothic said. His voice was deep and rumbled through the hall like distant thunder. "You want to hear about my greatest battles. You want to learn how I defeated the Krillian swarm at the Battle of Nex. You want to know how I held the line at Fortress Gamma when everyone said it was impossible." The young soldiers leaned forward. Their eyes shined with eagerness. This was exactly what they wanted to hear. "I will not tell you those stories tonight," Jothic continued. A wave of confusion and disappointment rippled through the crowd. Soldiers looked at each other with puzzled expressions. Why would the great Commander Jothic refuse to share his victories? "Instead," the commander said, "I will tell you about the most frightening experience of my military career. I will tell you about the time I fought alongside humans." The confusion in the room grew stronger. Humans. Many of the soldiers had never even met a human. The human species had joined the Galactic Defense Coalition only 5 years ago. They were new to space travel compared to most species. Their technology was basic. Their ships were slow. Their worlds were few and far between. Jothic could see the doubt on many faces. Some soldiers even looked amused as if he was making a joke. Humans were not impressive to look at. They had soft skin with no natural armor. They had no claws or fangs. They could not breathe different atmospheres or survive in extreme temperatures without special equipment. They came from a single planet and had not yet spread far across the stars. What could possibly be frightening about them? "I see you do not believe me," Jothic said. "That is good. I did not believe it either when I first met them. I thought humans were weak. I thought they would need my protection. I thought they were like children playing at war." He paused and looked down at his claws. They were thick and sharp, weapons that he was born with. He had used these claws to tear through enemy armor and crush enemy weapons. He was a natural warrior built for combat by millions of years of evolution. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I have never been more wrong about anything in my entire life." The room fell completely silent now. Even the most doubtful soldiers stopped smirking. There was something in Jothic's voice that made them pay attention. This was not the voice of a warrior boasting about victory. This was the voice of someone who had seen something that changed him forever. "Before I tell you this story," Jothic continued, "you must understand something. I have fought beside many species. The Valerians are strong. The Anturians are smart. The Corvuthi are brave. Every species in the coalition has gifts that make them valuable in war. But humans are different. Humans are something that should not exist." A young Corvuthi officer near the front raised a wing. "Commander, what do you mean? How can a species not exist?" Jothic's mandibles clicked again. "A good question. Let me explain it this way. Every species in this room evolved to survive. We developed weapons and armor and senses that helped us stay alive. We learned to avoid danger. We learned that when something is too dangerous, we run away. This is normal. This is how life works." The soldiers nodded. This made sense to them. Survival was the first rule of life. "Humans evolved differently," Jothic said. "They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. And instead of developing thick skin or poison or claws, they evolved something far more dangerous. They evolved stubbornness. They evolved the inability to quit. They evolved a mind that looks at impossible odds and says, 'I can do it anyway.'" The hall was so quiet now that the ventilation system seemed loud. Every soldier was focused completely on Jothic. "5 years ago I met humans for the first time," the commander said. "It was during the siege of Zarian 4 we were losing. The Krillian swarm had broken through our defenses. Thousands of my soldiers were dead. More were dying every hour. We needed reinforcements desperately. When I heard that a human ship was coming to help us, I felt nothing but disappointment. What could one small ship of weak creatures do against the swarm? Jothik's 4 eyes seemed to look at something far away, something only he could see. That human ship was called the Valiant. It was old and damaged and small. But the humans who came out of it changed everything I thought I knew about war. They changed everything I thought I knew about courage. They taught me what it really means to be terrifying. He leaned forward and his voice dropped lower. So I will tell you about Captain Jake Morrison and Lieutenant Lisa Hernandez and Sergeant Danny Cole. I will tell you about 20 humans who charged into hell itself. And when I am done, you will understand why I check the shadows even now, years later. Not because I fear humans as enemies, but because I finally understand what they are capable of. The commander settled back on his platform. But first you must know how the siege began, and why we were already losing before the humans ever arrived. Jothik ran after the humans, but his heavy armor and large body meant he could not keep up. The humans were incredibly fast. They moved across the frozen ground like they weighed nothing. Within seconds, they had disappeared into the darkness ahead. The commander switched on his helmet display to track them through sensors. What he saw made his blood run cold. 20 human signals were running straight toward over 300 Krillian signals. The 50 trapped Valerian warriors were surrounded in the middle, their signals fading as they died one by one. This was suicide. This was madness. 20 soldiers could not fight through 300 enemies. It was mathematically impossible. Every tactical program in existence would say the same thing. The correct decision was to pull back and preserve forces. Those 50 warriors were already dead. Throwing away 20 more lives to try to save them was foolish. Jothik knew this. His training told him this. His experience told him this. Every logical part of his mind told him this, but he kept running toward the battle anyway. Because something deep inside him, something that went beyond logic and training, refused to abandon anyone, even if they were insane humans rushing to their deaths. He reached the northern position 2 minutes later. What he saw there would stay burned into his memory forever. The humans had not tried to fight through the Krillians. Instead, they had split into 4 groups and attacked from different angles at once. They were using the chaos of the battlefield to their advantage, moving through the darkness with perfect coordination. Sergeant Cole's group hit the Krillians from the east. 5 humans against over 75 enemies. They moved like a single organism, their weapons firing in perfect rhythm. When Krillians got close, the humans switched to knives and close combat without hesitation. Jothik watched Cole himself stab a Krillian in its weak point under the head, then use the dying creature's body as cover to shoot 3 more. Lieutenant Hernandez led a group from the west. She was smaller than the male humans, but she fought with the same terrifying efficiency. She threw something that Jothik realized was a grenade, not at the Krillians, but at the ground between them and the trapped Valerians. The explosion did not kill many enemies, but it created a wall of smoke and fire that broke up the Krillian formation. Captain Morrison's group punched straight toward the center where the Valerian warriors were trapped. The humans moved in a tight wedge formation, concentrating their fire on anything in their path. They did not try to kill every enemy. They only killed the ones in their way. It was brutally efficient. The 4th group, led by a human named Pete Anderson, circled around to block the Krillian reinforcements that were rushing to join the fight. 5 humans against over 100 enemies, and somehow they were holding. Anderson's group was using the terrain, taking positions behind rocks and frozen debris, making the Krillians come to them one at a time instead of in a swarm. But what shocked Jothik most was not their tactics. It was their voices. The humans were talking to each other constantly over their communication channel. But they were not shouting orders or calling for help. They were joking, actually making jokes while fighting for their lives. "Greg, you've got 3 on your left," a voice said calmly. "Yeah, I see them." "Hey, Kelly, bet I can drop all 3 before you finish yours." "You're on." "Loser buys drinks when we get back to the ship." Plasma fire, explosions, the screech of dying Krillians, and humans making bets. Jothik forced himself to stop watching and start helping. His warriors had rallied and were pushing forward to support the human attack. Together they began to turn the tide of battle. It took 15 minutes of intense fighting, but Morrison's group reached the trapped Valerians. The humans immediately formed a defensive circle around the aliens, their weapons creating a wall of fire that kept the Krillians back. "We've got you," Morrison shouted at the Valerian sergeant in charge. "Fall back to our position, we'll cover you." The Valerian sergeant was named Crix. He was old, experienced, and like most Valerians, he was proud. "We can fight. Give us ammunition." "No time," Morrison said, shooting a Krillian that got too close. "Move now." "That's an order." "You do not command me, human," Crix roared. Greg Palmer, who was fighting right next to them, looked over and laughed. Actually laughed. "Dude, shut up and run." You can argue about who's in charge after we're not about to die. Something about Palmer's attitude, about a human laughing in the face of death, broke through Crix's pride. The Valerian sergeant ordered his warriors to fall back. The trapped soldiers retreated toward the depot with the humans covering them. That was when Jothic saw Greg Palmer take his first serious wound. A Krillian burst through the defensive line. Its claws raked across Palmer's chest, tearing through his armor. Blood sprayed. The wound was deep. Palmer stumbled backward. Any other species would have gone down. The pain would have been too much. The injury would have put them in shock. But Palmer did not fall. He did not even drop his weapon. Instead, he shot the Krillian that had wounded him. Then he shot 2 more. Then he grabbed a wounded Valerian warrior who had fallen and started dragging him toward safety. "Greg, you're hit," Kelly Wright shouted. "I know," Palmer shouted back. "I'll worry about it later." "Keep shooting." Jothic reached Palmer and took the wounded Valerian from him. Up close, he could see the human's injury. It was terrible. Deep cuts across his chest, blood soaking his armor. Palmer's face was pale and sweating. "You need medical attention," Jothic said. "After," Palmer said through gritted teeth. "Still have a job to do. You are bleeding heavily. You could die." Palmer looked at him with those forward-facing predator eyes. "Commander, respectfully, I'll die when I'm done. Not before." Then Palmer turned and went back to fighting. He moved slower now, favoring his injured side, but he kept fighting. He kept shooting. He kept covering the retreat of Jothic's warriors. The battle lasted another 20 minutes. The humans and Valerians fought their way back to the depot's defensive perimeter. Sergeant Cole's group was the last to fall back, still holding off the pursuing Krillians. When everyone was finally inside the walls and the Krillians had withdrawn to regroup, Jothic did a count. All 50 of his trapped warriors had survived. All 20 humans had survived. They had gone into an impossible situation and somehow come out alive. The humans were battered and bloody. Every single one had injuries. Palmer's chest wound was still bleeding. Wright had burns on her left arm. Morrison had a deep cut on his leg. Hernandez's armor had a crack where a Krillian claw had nearly pierced through to her skin. But they were all alive. And more incredibly, they were all still standing. Still ready to fight if needed. Medical teams rushed to help them. Palmer finally agreed to let a medic look at his chest when Captain Morrison ordered him to. The medic, an Anturian named Fell, examined the wound and his eyes went wide. "This cut is 6 inches deep," Fell said, his voice shaking. "It has damaged muscle and possibly organs. How are you conscious? How are you standing?" Palmer shrugged, then winced at the pain the movement caused. "Adrenaline, mostly. Also, I've had worse." "You have had worse than this?" Fell could not believe it. "Broke my leg in 3 places during a training exercise once," Palmer said. "Finished the exercise before I let them treat it. This is just some cuts." Jothic listened to this conversation and felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. These creatures were not normal. They could not be. No normal species could function with these injuries. No normal species could joke and laugh while bleeding. He approached Captain Morrison, who was having his leg wound treated. "Captain, I need to understand something. You charged into an enemy force 15 times your number. You saved my warriors when any tactical analysis would have said they were already dead. Why?" Morrison looked up at him. The human's face was tired, covered in dirt and blood. "Because they were yours, Commander. We fight together now. That makes them ours too, and we don't leave ours behind." "But the mathematics," Jothic said. "You could have all died. Probably should have died. Trading 20 lives for 50 is not worth it when all 70 might be lost." "Math doesn't matter when people are trapped," Morrison said. "Yeah, the smart play was to let them go. But humans didn't get where we are by always making the smart play. Sometimes you have to make the right play instead." "What is the difference?" Morrison smiled, even though Jothic could see the pain he was in. The smart play keeps you alive. The right play lets you live with yourself afterward. My people have a saying, Commander. We'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. We'd rather take a risk to save someone than play it safe and live with that guilt. Jothik's mandibles clicked rapidly. This was beyond his understanding. Your species is insane. Probably, Morrison agreed. But we're your insane species now, so you might as well get used to it. That night, after the wounded were treated and the defenses were repaired, Jothik stood on top of the depot's command building. He looked out at the frozen landscape of Zarian 4 and thought about what he had witnessed. 20 humans had saved 50 Valerian warriors from certain death. They had done it by ignoring every rule of warfare that Jothik had learned in 30 campaigns. They had done it by being reckless, aggressive, and absolutely refusing to accept that some situations were hopeless. Jothik assigned the humans to a secondary defensive position on the eastern side of the depot. It was important enough to need defenders, but not critical enough to risk his best troops there. If the humans died, which he expected they would, it would not cost him the battle. Lieutenant Hernandez had studied the defensive setup and suggested several improvements. Jothik listened politely but did not take her advice. What did humans know about warfare? They had been in space for less than 50 years. His species had been fighting wars for thousands. The Krillians came as the sun was setting. The attack was massive, over 2,000 of the insect creatures rushing toward the depot from multiple directions. Jothik stood at the central command post, watching the sensor displays and directing his troops. Red dots representing enemies swarmed across the screen. The battle started like all the others. Automated guns opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the darkening sky. Explosions sent Krillian body parts flying. The creatures kept coming, climbing over their dead, pushing forward with mindless determination. Jothik's soldiers held the main defensive lines. Valerian warriors roared battle cries and fired their weapons. The Krillians reached the walls and started climbing. Close combat began, claws against claws, mandibles snapping. The eastern position where the humans were stationed seemed quiet at first. Only about 300 Krillians attacked that sector. Jothik watched the sensor display, expecting to see the human position get overrun quickly. He was already planning how to redistribute his forces to cover that gap. Then he heard the sound. It came through the communication channel, picked up by the microphones in the human armor. It was a sound he had never heard in battle before. Music. The humans were playing music. What are they doing? Jothik demanded. One of his communication officers, an Anturian named Vec, looked confused. Commander, the humans appear to be playing something called rock music through their external speakers. In the middle of a battle? Yes, Commander. Jothik switched his display to show video feeds from the eastern position. What he saw made no sense. The humans were not hiding behind cover. They were not using the defensive walls the Anturians had built. Instead, they were spread out in small groups in front of the walls. They were standing in the open, weapons firing, while loud music blasted from speakers on their armor. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was tactically wrong in every possible way, and it was working. The humans moved like nothing Jothik had ever seen. They fought as if they could predict where every Krillian would move. Sergeant Cole's squad focused their fire with perfect timing, dropping Krillians before they could get close. When the creatures did reach them, the humans did not panic. They switched to close combat like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jothik watched a human named Greg Palmer take a plasma burn to his shoulder. The wound should have disabled his arm. Instead, Palmer just switched his rifle to his other hand and kept fighting. Another human, a woman named Kelly Wright, had a Krillian leap at her from the side. She dropped her rifle, pulled out a knife, and stabbed the creature 3 times before it hit the ground. Then she picked up her rifle and went back to shooting as if nothing had happened. They are enjoying this, Vec said quietly, his tentacles trembling with confusion. Commander, I think the humans are having fun. Jothik could not process that. No sane species enjoyed combat. Fighting was necessary, sometimes honorable, but never fun. Yet as he watched, he saw several humans laughing. Actually laughing while Krillians tried to kill them. The eastern position held. In fact, it did more than hold. The humans killed every single Krillian that attacked their sector. Not one creature got past them. When the battle ended 2 hours later, the human position was secure. The humans had 0 casualties, 0, not 1 dead. Not even 1 seriously wounded. Jothik left his command post and went to the eastern position personally. He had to see this for himself. He had to understand what had just happened. The humans were checking their weapons and reloading when he arrived. Several of them were eating something called protein bars. Others were drinking water. They looked tired but not exhausted. Sergeant Cole was examining a cut on his arm that looked shallow. Captain Morrison saw Jothic approaching and nodded. "Commander." "We held the position." "No breaches, I saw," Jothic said slowly. "I have questions." "I bet you do," Morrison said with a slight smile. "Why were you playing music during combat?" "Helps us focus," Cole answered, wrapping a bandage around his cut. "Also, it pisses off the enemy. Creatures like the Krillians think they're scary. When we're jamming out to music while fighting them, it messes with their heads." "Krillians do not have complex emotions," Jothic said. "They cannot be psychologically disturbed." "Maybe," Hernandez said, joining the conversation. "But we're not just trying to disturb them. The music helps us. Humans work better with rhythm. It coordinates our movements without us having to think about it." Jothic's mandibles clicked. "That makes no tactical sense." "Probably not to you," Morrison agreed. "But we're not Valerians. We're humans. We fight differently." "I noticed," Jothic said. "Your soldier Palmer took a plasma burn that should have disabled him. He kept fighting." Morrison looked over at Palmer, who was joking with another human nearby. "Greg's tough. He'll feel that tomorrow, but adrenaline is a hell of a thing." "What is adrenaline?" "A chemical our bodies produce when we're in danger," Hernandez explained. "It makes us stronger and faster for a short time. Blocks pain. Lets us keep fighting even when injured." Jothic stared at her. "Your bodies have a chemical that makes you stronger during combat?" "Among other things," she said. "We've also got endorphins, cortisol, and a few other hormones that kick in during stress. Earth was a dangerous place to evolve. Our bodies learned to give us every advantage possible when we're threatened." The commander tried to process this. It explained some of what he had seen, but not all of it. "Your tactics were reckless. You stood in the open. You should have used cover." "Cover is fine for defensive combat," Cole said. "But humans aren't really defensive fighters. We're pursuit predators, Commander. We're built to chase things down over long distances. Standing still and hiding feels wrong to us on an instinct level." "Pursuit predators?" Jothic repeated. Morrison nodded. "On Earth, humans hunted by following prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the fastest or strongest, but we can run for longer than almost anything else. That hunting style shaped how we think about combat. We prefer to keep moving, stay aggressive, maintain pressure." Something cold settled in Jothic's chest. He was beginning to understand, and he did not like what he was learning. "There is something else," he said. "Your soldier right. She used a knife in close combat. Why not a plasma weapon or an energy blade?" Wright herself answered. "She was sitting on a supply crate cleaning that same knife." "Because I like knives, Commander. I know how they work. I trust them. Plus there's something satisfying about close combat. More personal." "More personal," Jothic repeated. "You enjoy fighting at close range where you could easily die." "I enjoy winning," Wright corrected. "Close range just makes it more real. You can see the enemy's eyes. You know for certain they're dead when they drop." Jothic looked around at the other humans. They were all nodding or smiling like Wright had said something normal. These creatures were insane. They had to be. No sane species found satisfaction in close combat. No sane species enjoyed being in danger. "Commander," Morrison said, his voice becoming serious. "I know this is strange for you, but you need to understand something about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. Everything was a threat. The humans who survived were the ones who could stay calm under pressure. The ones who could think clearly during danger. The ones who could even find joy in overcoming challenges. That is not normal," Jothic said. "No," Morrison agreed. "It's not. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world for a reason. Most species would go extinct on our planet. We thrive there. That changes you at a deep level." Before Jothic could respond, alarms blared across the depot. His communicator crackled to life. It was Vex's voice, high and panicked. "Commander, the northern position is being overrun. We have a breakthrough. 50 Valerian warriors are cut off behind enemy lines." Jothic felt his heart sink. 50 warriors, some of his best soldiers, were trapped. They would be dead in minutes. The Krillians would tear them apart. He started to turn to run toward the northern position, already knowing he would be too late to save them. "Wait," Morrison said. The human captain looked at Sergeant Cole. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication. Cole nodded. What are you doing? Jothic asked. Saving your people, Morrison said simply. Then he spoke into his communicator. All units were going in. Combat rescue, standard entry pattern. Move out. Jothic watched in horror as all 20 humans grabbed their weapons and started running toward the northern position, toward the breakthrough, toward hundreds of Krillians and certain death. No, Jothic shouted. You will die. There are too many. Morrison looked back over his shoulder. He was smiling. Actually smiling. Commander, we're humans. This is what we do. Then they were gone, running into the darkness toward the siege continued for 10 more days. Jothic and his forces held the depot while the last civilian transports escaped from the city. The Krillians attacked repeatedly, but now the humans fought alongside the Valerians and Anturians. Each battle followed the same pattern. The Krillians came in massive numbers. The defenders held through a combination of Valerian strength, Anturian cleverness, and human stubbornness. But Jothic learned more about humans with each passing day, and each new piece of knowledge made them more frightening. On the 9th day, supplies reached a critical point. Food was running low. Each soldier was on quarter rations, enough to survive but barely enough to maintain combat effectiveness. Jothic saw his Valerian warriors becoming slower and weaker. The Anturians were struggling to maintain focus. Everyone was suffering, everyone except the humans. Jothic asked Captain Morrison about this. The human captain looked thinner than before, clearly hungry like everyone else. But he and his soldiers still moved with the same energy and fought with the same intensity. How? Jothic asked. How do you maintain combat effectiveness on such limited food? Morrison chewed slowly on a ration bar before answering. Humans are persistence hunters, remember? We evolved to track prey for days or even weeks. Our bodies are very good at conserving energy. We can function on very little food for a surprisingly long time. But you must be starving. Oh, we are, Morrison admitted. But humans have lived through worse. My grandfather was part of a survival training program where they dropped him in the wilderness with nothing but a knife and a water bottle. He survived for 3 weeks before they picked him up. He said the worst part wasn't the hunger, it was the boredom. Jothic stared at him. Your people trained by surviving in wilderness areas with no supplies? Some of us do. We call it survival training. The idea is that if you can survive in the worst conditions on Earth, you can survive almost anywhere. Earth must be a nightmare world. Morrison laughed. You have no idea, Commander. Later that day, Jothic spoke with Lieutenant Hernandez. He wanted to understand more about this Earth planet. She was happy to explain while she checked weapons systems. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, she said. Do you know what that means? I have heard the term but do not understand it. Hernandez pulled up a holographic display showing a blue and green planet. Most habitable worlds fall between Class 1 and Class 5. Class 1 worlds are very gentle. Stable weather, few predators, abundant food. Class 5 worlds have some challenges but nothing too serious. Earth is Class 12. What makes it so dangerous? Where do I start? Hernandez zoomed in on different parts of the planet. Our weather systems produce massive storms called hurricanes and typhoons that can destroy entire cities. We have tornadoes, spinning columns of air that can pick up buildings. We have earthquakes that crack the ground open. We have volcanoes that explode with enough force to change global climate. Jothic's mandibles clicked nervously. And humans live through these events? We don't just live through them, we build our cities knowing they'll happen and plan for it. We have early warning systems, evacuation procedures, emergency supplies. Some humans even chase storms on purpose to study them. That is insane. Maybe. Hernandez shrugged. But that's humanity. We don't just survive our planet. We study it. We prepare for it. We even find it exciting sometimes. She switched the display to show various animals. Then there are the predators. Earth has thousands of species that can kill humans. Big cats that can run 60 miles per hour. Bears that can tear through steel. Crocodiles that can crush bones with their jaws. Sharks with rows of teeth. Snakes with venom that can kill in minutes. Spiders, scorpions, jellyfish, all kinds of things that want to eat us or poison us. How did your species survive? By being better predators than all of them, Hernandez said simply. Humans used our intelligence to create weapons. We used our endurance to outlast faster prey. We used our social bonds to hunt in coordinated groups. We turned wolves into dogs that help us hunt. We conquered our planet not through physical strength but through our minds and our refusal to give up. Jathik thought about this. Your planet shaped you into warriors. Our planet shaped us into survivors, Hernandez corrected. Warriors came later. But yes, Earth taught humanity some hard lessons. The biggest lesson was that you either adapt or you die, so we learned to adapt to everything. On the 14th day, the situation became desperate. The Krillians launched their biggest attack yet. Over 5,000 of them swarmed the depot from all sides. Jathik knew this was probably the end. His forces were exhausted, low on ammunition, down to less than 300 combat-effective soldiers. The battle raged for hours. Positions that had held for 2 weeks fell. The defensive walls crumbled. Krillians poured into the depot grounds. Jathik ordered a fighting retreat to the main building. If they could hold that, they might survive until reinforcements arrived. That was when Captain Morrison was hit. A Krillian managed to get through the defensive line. Its claw caught Morrison across his left side, tearing away armor and flesh. The captain went down hard. Blood pooled beneath him. Medical scans showed severe damage. He was dying. Jathik reached him first, dragging him behind cover. Morrison's face was white with pain and blood loss, but his eyes were still clear. "Commander?" Morrison gasped. "Promise me something." "Save your strength," Jathik said, trying to stop the bleeding. "Promise me you'll get my people out. All of them. Don't let them do anything stupid trying to avenge me. You are not dead yet." Morrison coughed and blood came up. "Pretty close, though. Just promise me." Before Jathik could respond, Sergeant Cole appeared. He looked at Morrison's wound and his face went hard. "Sir, you're going to be fine. We're getting you to medical right now." "Danny, I'm done," Morrison said. "You're in command now. Get everyone out." "No, sir," Cole said firmly. He pulled out a medical injector and pressed it against Morrison's neck. "You're not done until I say you're done. This is a trauma stabilizer. It'll keep you alive until the medics can work on you properly. You're going to survive this, sir, because I'm not explaining to your wife why I let you die on some frozen rock," the injector hissed. Morrison's eyes went wide, then started to focus better. His breathing steadied slightly. The bleeding slowed. "That should buy us an hour," Cole said. "Plenty of time." Jathik stared. "That wound is fatal. That medicine cannot possibly be enough. You'd be surprised what humans can survive with the right drugs and the right motivation," Cole said. He looked at Morrison. "Sir, your motivation is that if you die, Lieutenant Hernandez is going to take command and she'll probably do something crazy like charging the main Krillian force. So you need to stay alive to stop her." Despite his injuries, despite the pain he was clearly in, Morrison laughed. It was a weak laugh, but it was real. "Fair point. Okay, I'll live, but only because Lisa's tactical plans scare me." They got Morrison to the medical station in the main building. The Anturian medics said he had a 30% chance of survival. Cole told them to make it 100%, or he would be very disappointed. Something about the way he said it made the medics work faster. The battle continued through the night and into the next morning. Then finally, sensors detected incoming ships. Coalition reinforcements had arrived. A full fleet with thousands of soldiers. The Krillians, sensing they were about to be trapped, withdrew. The siege was over. Jathik stood in the command center as relief forces landed. The depot was a wreck. Bodies of Krillians and Coalition soldiers lay everywhere. The walls were rubble. Equipment was destroyed, but they had held. The civilians had escaped. The mission was complete. The human casualties were devastating by percentage. 15 of the original 20 humans had been wounded seriously at least once during the siege, but not a single human had died. Not one, including Captain Morrison, who was in surgery but expected to survive. A senior Coalition officer came to debrief Jathik. She was a Valerian general named Kratok, old and experienced. She reviewed his reports and looked at the battlefield assessments. "You held with minimal forces against overwhelming odds," Kratok said. "Your tactical decisions were sound. The integration of the human unit was particularly effective. I am recommending you and all your soldiers for commendations." "Thank you, General," Jathik said, "but the humans deserve the most recognition. Without them, we would have failed." Kratok's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I have heard reports about the human species. Some say they are weak. Others say they are dangerous. You have fought beside them. What do you say?" Jathik thought carefully about his answer. General, humans are the most terrifying species I have ever encountered. Not because they are strong, though they endure injuries that would kill most of us. Not because they are smart, though their tactics are effective. They are terrifying because they make you want to be worthy of fighting beside them. Explain. Humans will die for those they consider part of their group, Jathik said. Not out of duty alone. Not out of honor alone. They will die because something in their nature makes the death of their people worse than their own death. When they accept you as one of theirs, they will walk through fire for you.